Schaefer, speaking of like just people to keep an eye on, we saw two big additions to Nebraska's offense over the weekend, but the status of Jamal Banks, that's what people are wondering about right now. Do you think he
just Jamal Banks? People aren't wondering about Stefan Thompson?
Maybe
Oh,
Thompson
we're wondering.
too.
We're all
maybe
wondering.
Thompson too, but Banks was the high caliber name there.
Yeah, I think both of those guys are going to be making decisions, here in the middle of the week. Could be today, could be tomorrow. They're both, Banks a little more talkative than Thompson. Thompson has more or less told people he is not interested in talking during the process. It hasn't stopped us from trying. We're not great at the listening part there at times as an industry as a whole, but they're both probably going to make a decision here pretty soon. Players report at Nebraska on Saturday, and I think they want to have as many of these guys on campus, as soon as they can. And so they had Thompson in, they had Banks in, they got Nair, they got
Dowdell.
They got Dowdell, and they never ended up hosting. I don't even know how you pronounce the first name, but they never ended up hosting the Idaho linebacker. Whose last name is Alexander, and that's very easy to say. So
the other part is not easy to say.
Yeah, is it Zyrie?
I was told it was pronounced X-ray, and I don't know if they were messing with me or not.
That is not what I have heard, but I didn't. I could have very easily been like thrown something on YouTube.
Maybe he just goes by X-ray as like a nickname.
Yeah, it could be. That would make a lot more sense.
I don't know.
That would lead to some really interesting NIL opportunities that few others would have. Right?
Welcome to Ortho Nebraska, brought to you by X-Ray Alexander.
Nebraska Orthopedics. That's great. I like that. I like that a lot. Anyways, well, it's not going to happen here. And real quickly, kudos to that guy. He's trying to take like 8 visits, and he was going to try to get to Nebraska for like 6 hours. And they're like, we're good. We're not going to do this. We're not interested.
Okay, so where do you think they are on Banks? That's the one that as Andrew mentioned, he's that big-bodied wide receiver. He's got Power 5 production. I think that's the one. I know linebacker is important, but we only care about offense around here. What's the status on him as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, the thing with Banks is I'm trying to figure out who the real competition is. It feels like it's very much Nebraska's out in front. I know Notre Dame was involved, but they're out, and so he's not going to go to Notre Dame. And then the other school that got mentioned to me, and this before the visit, and certainly before their win last night, was Michigan. And so, but they are going to be in a weird spot with their coaching situation, unless they just come out and just announce Harbaugh stepping away, and then the OC is going to take over, and that's where they're at, and everything else is going to stay the same. I think Nebraska is in a pretty good spot for Jamal Banks right now. And I think because he's making a relatively quick decision after this visit to Nebraska, I think because Nebraska needs wide receivers and needs, I shouldn't say needs wide, they need a veteran presence, certainly in that room. And I think he can offer that. I think his physical size makes him intriguing because you like guys that, how do I say this without being offensive? And it's not one of my strong suits.
No, go ahead and be offensive. It's fine.
Yeah. Billy Kemp's a nice player. You can only run so many plays with Billy Kemp. And we saw that in the very first game when Minnesota took him out of it completely because they just draped him. And Jeff Sims can't throw the ball into a very small window. And you'd run these pass plays where you're running a post pattern over the middle of the field with a 5'8" wide receiver. Unless he's, Mike Wallace,
Tyreek Hill,
Antonio Brown or whomever. Yeah. Like you don't see that. Like that's Tyreek Hill is an exception unto himself, but that's a really tough thing to do. Without elite speed. And I don't know that they ever were going to utilize Billy Kemp in a way that was going to take advantage of what he could do for them just because of how their passing game was. But still, when you go into the portal, I mean, part of the success of a Samori Toure is that he was a bigger guy. Like he wasn't super thick. He wasn't Quincy Enunwa level, jacked, but he could go out and get a football. He could high point. He could win in the air. You could throw it up to him. And Adrian would do that. And I think that Jamal Banks and to a maybe even bigger extent, Isaiah Nair, these two guys are going to be able to kind of help Nebraska in that regard. And maybe even more importantly than all of that, can give an example for Malachi Coleman, who needs someone to sort of model his college career off of. And there's nobody on the roster that really has that experience, that has his kind of body size. If you think that he's going to add some more weight to him in a full off season and under Corey Campbell and the strength and conditioning plan. So I like it for a variety of reasons. And I really think Dylan Raiola, we didn't get to see his peer recruiting because he committed to Nebraska so late.
Mm-hmm.
I think he is certainly in the mix in every one of, even someone like Stefan Thompson. I think having a guy like Dylan Raiola who's so confident and basically has all of this sort of clout without having ever played a snap, I think that helps Nebraska too. And I think he could use those receivers as much as anybody.
Schaefer, let's assume that they land Banks after they land Nair, and then we mentioned all the young guys in the room. How do you feel about that room if that's what we've got going into the fall?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, the one thing you don't have is you don't have that one returning guy where you're like, okay, he had 35, 40 catches last year. You feel good about that, but you're going to put in two if they were to walk away with Banks. Where you like it? I mean, I have never missed an opportunity, and I won't here today, to sing the praises of what I think Jalen Lloyd can ultimately be in this offense and as a player in college football. And I think he's arrow up. They love Jaden Doss. They love Demetrius Bell and Malachi Coleman. We know all about his upside. And so I think being able to add a couple steady veterans, and somebody like Nair, who didn't get to play in 22 because he blew his knee out, but I think he blew his knee out. I can't remember exactly the injury, but he was set up to be one of Texas's top receivers. He was having a monster camp. They loved what he was doing. He got hurt, and we saw that play out. Like, they have great receiving talent. So he ended up getting buried in 2023. And so he's going to come back really, really hungry. I just think those guys are good assets, both in the locker room and then on the field for a relatively young offensive team. You look at the guys that could be out on the field for Nebraska outside of their offensive line without these transfer additions. They're pretty young. They don't have a lot of playing time out there. And so getting a couple steady veterans, I think, is always helpful.
Schaefer, you mentioned the veterans a couple of times now. And so my question to you is, what's next in terms of where a veteran needs to go? Is it in the quarterback room? Is that next on the priority list?
I don't know that there's anyone else that they're adding here at this period. I think we're probably talking more spring. Maybe they can find someone kind of a deep cut college quarterback that's just looking for an opportunity, but we haven't really seen or heard a lot there. I almost wonder if they just want to get into the spring and see what that looks like. And then, you come out of the spring and you might have the quarterback pictures around the college football where guys are leaving and they need an opportunity somewhere else. They might be more willing to come in and be a backup without necessarily having the chance to challenge in the spring. I don't know. I think it's difficult. If I was advising anyone that was going into the portal and they were looking at Nebraska and they were a quarterback, it'd be like, look, you're not going to win the job. I mean, there's no way you're winning that job. So if you're comfortable going there to be a backup quarterback, or if you're comfortable going there with the idea that an injury is how you're going to get onto the field in a significant way, and even then, like, it's just hard. I mean, you have
Schaefer,
and then
there you
go. Did I disappear?
Yeah, just cut out there for a hot sec, but we got you again.
All right. And then, I was saying you have Raiola, most popular player on the team, hasn't taken a snap in college football. And then you have Heinrich Haarberg, who this coaching staff likes. Like, I know people want to bury and they want to throw him away and everything else. They like him. And he's liked in that locker room. And he's a native Nebraska kid. And I don't think he's going anywhere. And I think if he's their backup quarterback, I think Nebraska's going to be okay with that because he's played in games. And he won. He was the starting quarterback in all 5 of their wins this year. And so I just don't know that they view it the same way. If they tried to find someone, it seems like it'd be more so they could have a really competent battle between Haarberg and maybe you find a junior college guy that doesn't have a great opportunity at the FBS level, but he's willing to walk on and compete, that kind of thing. Like, I just think they have to be creative, because I don't know that you're going to go into the portal and get what you want. And I don't know that they have the scholarship numbers to allow them to do that either.
Schaefer, do you find it the least bit risky to rely on just a true freshman or a couple of true freshmen in Haarberg to turn this offense around? Or does it just all boil down to having the right person in the room?
I mean, it's not the least bit risky. It's a huge risk. I mean, it's basically going all in on a pair of 8s on the fourth hand of playing, in a tournament, right? Like it's a good hand, but it's not necessarily assuring you of anything. And there's no safety net, right? So, I mean, it's a situation where I think this is just where they are. They wanted Dylan Raiola. They made the long-term decision to take him. They passed on the short term of Kyle McCord. There was no way they could get both from either quarterback. I don't think it would have worked for either one of them. And I think that makes sense the more you think about it. And this is just where they are. And so they, I don't think we're talking about a Nebraska team that's going to go rip off 10 wins. But if you're talking about a Nebraska team that can go 7-5 and handle some growing pains as Dylan Raiola progresses as a quarterback, then you've set yourself up really well. And you maybe sold out some short-term success for some long-term health of the program. But yeah, it's going to be risky. It's going to be nerve-wracking, every time he takes a big hit and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen here? And we don't talk about this side of it enough. What if it just comes in against UTEP and it's not good and it takes a while because he's a true freshman like this, the top quarterbacks in the country for the 2023 class, not a lot of those guys played. Not a lot of them got opportunities. Arch Manning wasn't playing over multiple quarterbacks in Texas. So I think we have to allow for the idea that it may not work right away. It might be really ugly, but they're willing to invest in this. And I think we have to accept that that's where it's at.
Yeah, Schaefer, I'm not willing to accept that idea that it might be ugly, just for the record.
That's okay. Most people should not blindly accept premises that I say on here.
Schaefer, that's all we got for you today. I know there's a lot going on with Dana Holgerson and stuff too, but we are out of time. So hopefully by the time we talk to you next week, there's maybe some more movement in that direction as well. We appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, gentlemen, have a good one.
Thanks, Schaefer.
That's Mike J. Schaefer from Husker 24/7. All right, coming up next, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk some Nebraska and Purdue basketball tonight. The Cornhuskers take on the number 1 team in the land, and we're going to talk to Mike Carmen of goldenblack.com about Purdue and the matchup against Nebraska here tonight. All that and a little bit more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln.